You cannot create a full-fledged app because it requires a lot of things pre and post.
See, somebody who doesn't know coding is able to create basic apps, and that's where they are able to get that aha moment.
These 5-minute apps. Looking at Twitter, people are talking about apps in 5 minutes, which is very cool. But what is the reality? So the topic I want to discuss today in our podcast on artificial intelligence is about these 5-minute apps, right? So, I'm looking at Twitter, people are talking about apps in 5 minutes, which is very cool. But what is the reality? For example, this Sahil says on using Cursor plus Claude 3.5 Sonnet, Tailwind to ship 20x faster. And then this another person, DD on Twitter, says with Claude launching on iOS today, I can now generate the Spreadwise app instead of paying for Pro. Basic apps can literally be programmed from scratch in English. But then some people are talking about more advanced stuff. Now, I left coding long time back. You are a very active techie and you're literally on this every day.
Right.
And you're building Fast Tracker AI. What is your take on this? Is it real? It's cool, but what's the reality behind building apps in 5 minutes on using AI?
Let me explain a little about coder models first, and then we'll get into the apps in 5 minutes. So any AI coder models, we can expect it to do 4 things. One is interpreting an existing code, implementing something which we would need. That's where a lot of these tweets are coming in, where people are able to create smaller apps. Third one is code completion, where there's already some code or it's partially complete. You expect the coder model to complete this code base. And the last one is error correction, identifying an error and trying to fix it. Well, for this, syntactical errors are very simple, and most AI models are able to do this quite accurately. But logical errors are something where there's a lot of flaws right now. And you will see a lot of posts on these as well, where people are complaining about logical error even while generating. So coming to your question about the 5-minute coding and creating these kind of apps.
And if you can answer it in 2 parts. One, let's say there's somebody who does not know coding and is talking about using Cursor and Claude 3.5 versus somebody who codes day and night. How will this change the landscape?
See, somebody who doesn't know coding is able to create basic apps, and that's where they are able to get that aha moment. And that makes sense. But then someone who knows coding, for them, life is getting easier. They are able to do much more in the same span of time, which otherwise would have taken a lot of grunt work for them.
Right.
That's an advantage for sure. But for the first people, deploying something seems easy, but there has been a lot of issues. You will see a lot of DDoS attacks happening, servers maxing out, a lot of requests are not able to get processed. These are the issues which you see when someone who doesn't know coding or don't understand the engineering aspects trying to deploy something. And another thing is trying to make the micro corrections, right? When you don't understand the logic behind something, if it's AI generated, you can't really add more things or modify or make it better. Maybe some UI aspects, but definitely not the internal logic behind it.
So let's say if somebody is a non-coder and let's say they build something like a Spreadwise app or one of these other things, the max you can do it is you can run it within like a Replit type of an environment, right? But you cannot create a full-fledged app because it requires a lot of things pre and post.
Correct.
Right? So they are basically building the core functionality, the microservice or something, but then the deployment of it, the infrastructure, the way it will scale or multiple people can use it, all those things are still not there.
100%. But I think over time that's going to become easier as well. Just like how 7-8 years ago, creating a website was also a little bit more time consuming task. Now there are a lot of no code platforms, and in fact even larger companies use no code platforms to deploy websites. Similarly, right now there are Replit, there's few other tools where people are able to automate tasks and they are able to deploy apps. But then at scale and ensuring that you are able to manage all the data which is coming in and managing and ensuring that the data is properly indexed, this is where there are still problems. For an app like Splitwise, where the functionality is fairly basic, it might be easier. But then again, when you're trying to manage multiple people on a splitwise kind of environment, that's going to be a task, right? You can't process and ensure that you're able to instantly display everything. The API response times are optimized. These are going to be difficult just by having some microservices. It's not going to be the most optimal solution. At scale, in my opinion, it's still not as easy as people call it to be, but it will be very soon.
So, look, it's very easy to get excited with this whole cursor plus Claude thing, and we are seeing it on Twitter. But let's to just finish the non-coder part of it. Specifically, what are the things which are like missing to, let's say, Splitwise as app is a multiplayer thing, right? Like there are like 5 people trying to split their bills and expenses and sporting events and all that they have done. Now I can build this today. I can run it on one of my browsers or environment. But how do 5 people use it? What is that which is missing today, and where they will need help?
Yeah, the whole pipeline, right, involves not just creating the app. It also has one deployment and the backend side of it, where you will have to create the APIs which are able to communicate with the front end. So currently, the deployment on maybe a Play Store or an iOS App Store, this is fairly simple because there are a lot of tools which will help you automate these. And same on the backend, like there is Heroku, there is DigitalOcean, where people are able to deploy servers very fast. Like you don't need to know much of server side coding to be deploying apps right now. But auto scaling these servers and ensuring that all of these API requests are met, that's where it takes a little bit of task. And also, not every system can be designed the same way, right? For example, I have been trying out Cursor the last few weeks. And one place where I see it going wrong most of the time is trying to get the logic right. If I ask it to create an API to do something which is basic, it does it. But then there is assumptions within it as well. It doesn't know the exact intricacies always. It assumes there is a basic boilerplate code or there is some function which we already have, and it will reference that, telling call your function or the API here. So basic tasks it is able to do very well. Building a greater logic, a bigger logic, that's where it has not been able to do well. And I have seen a lot of mistakes which it has been doing as well, where bigger logic, Splitwise is an easier case because this is a case where it's basic math. You're trying to take X dollars and you're trying to split it between Y number of people. But if I extrapolate that into something bigger, like, okay, this is split within Y people, and after splitting as well, I want to ensure that the expenses are divided. After splitting, where is it going? For
and grouping multiple expenses as an
exactly.
example. So if you have to make that customization, what will it take on top of what you have created? Will you go back to Cursor and Claude and then describe the problem more profusely and with all the details so that now it builds an app which has those features, or you will make customization to the existing thing you build?
Both are an option actually, but the first one usually fails, at least the models today, because the more complicated logic you ask it to do, the more mistakes it tends to do.
And then if I'm not a coder, then I won't know the mistakes, is it? Or
yes, that's what it is, right? Unless you're able to understand the logic aspect of it, even if you give back the same code to Cursor or any of these AI coder model, it tends to not understand it properly most of the time. Interpretation is something where the models are not as good. Like give it the more larger code base you give, the more mistake it tends to do.
so it's a hype to say that coders are going to lose their job now. It's going to take some time, it seems.
I would say the grunt work which used to happen. For example, earlier to change something just basic HTML, CSS corrections, right? Those were also taking much time, right? These are way faster now because AI models are very good at them. But creating the system architecture, ensuring that there's scalable systems which are deployed, and also the microservices, because in the end, the way optimizing a code works is either you microservice parts of it so that you are able to ensure that there's not many internal communications. These are some things where we would need engineers to think through stuff and ensure that the architecture is laid out right. But creating a basic site or a smaller microservices, that is fairly easy. And that's where engineers' life gets easier. Maybe that might lead to some people, I don't know if we should call it losing jobs, but I would say becoming more efficient. Engineers would definitely be more efficient.
So look, I will summarize the discussion so far for non-coders. There are 5 things I heard. One, non-coders can create apps, but these are like small things that they can use at their end. For example, I could basically do my expenses a little bit, or like do some basic splitwise functionality. Um, then second thing you said is that the grunt work which was required to do like basic microservice or basic application is kind of getting sorted. So now that will not just help the non-coders but a lot of coders. Third thing you said is that there's a lot of stuff before and after. So if you're trying to build a multiplayer application which will or something that you have to give it to other people to use, like it's a commercial application that you want to give, then there's a lot of other things that have to be done around deployment, backend, etc., etc. It's fourth, it makes mistakes. So it can be a hobby. You can even use it for your own purposes. But if you have to launch a commercial app like Uber,
Yes.
or you have to launch something like FastTrack, it won't be possible today for a non-coder. And for a coder, it will save some time, but still the problem solving aspect of it, the thinking aspect of it is still can't be taken away. And then a lot of stuff on implementation and backend cannot be taken. Now, let's talk about the developers, right? A little bit. Now, there's a guy who says, and he seems to be a coder, he says, I build an AI accountant that lives in my email inbox. Send an email to an address with an invoice. Accountant parses invoice with GPT-4o Mini, inserts it in my expenses sheet, sends a confirmation email. This is a fairly, I would say, automation of like some basic steps, right? So basically, a coder will be able to do it using Cursor and Claude and maybe a little bit of customization. So for somebody, I'm not talking here. Let's start from the top, right? So basically, 10x engineers, people who are like technologists, who are like really, really good CTOs and all that. Somebody like you, how does life change after figuring out Cursor and Claude and all that?
Uh,
Where are you using it for?
I use it literally in most places, particularly because, see, an engineer's work particularly is to lay out the architecture right, and he's able to think through what concepts he wants to apply. That, in my opinion, is the harder part, not coding itself. Coding itself in the end is just putting that into picture, like we are trying to just implement that somewhere using some coding language. That part is becoming easier, and that for sure is making any engineer very efficient, and the best ones are getting even better because of it, because creating a smaller microservices, just like this case, right? These are smaller basic tasks which he's able to stitch through and automate. These smaller microservices are easier to create. But then he would still have to think about how he is going to get the email permissions, how will the data flow work, and that part would be an engineering task here. That is fairly simple as well. But understanding this is the work of the engineer. Putting that into code is somewhere Cursor, Find, and even Llama right now, Claude. These models are making it way easier. It saves a lot of time, and it's giving technologists more time to spend on understanding what's happening.
And one more thing, right? Just to understand from your perspective, let's say when you are running a tech startup, and let's say you have like 8 or 10 people team, right, at a slightly larger scale, or 4 5 people team of engineers. Now, some of the grunt work that you talked about earlier, if that can now be done by AI, do you still need those 10 engineers?
I don't think so. We would not need the same 10 engineers, but we would probably need way lesser. So,
Because if you are a CTO and a technologist and you're saying like the most important thing is problem solving, architecture, thinking how technology will solve this problem, and then the grunt work can actually be done by AI, which is the code which was being written by the engineers, like junior engineers earlier. Do we still need those people in the team?
we don't need the same number of people, but I won't say the roles are obsolete altogether. Rather, we definitely don't need, if there was 3 people earlier, we would need only 1 right now because things are done way faster.
Or you can have the same number of people and do more work
Exactly.
and create more companies or more
Exactly.
products.
Yeah, ship things much faster.
Yeah.
Ensure that the code bases which are getting shipped are much more better and very well formatted, which earlier used to take a lot of time. Just like Amazon Q. Amazon internally was able to use Q and they were able to revamp their whole code base. And
So they're moving code base from one programming language to the
right,
other, right?
right. This earlier would have taken a lot of engineering efforts, and I don't think those engineers would have liked to do that as well. It's
Yeah.
as good as looking at some code and changing it to another language. That's not somewhere where even their talent would have been used, in my opinion.
So 2, 3 things just to summarize on this part. One, I remember Box CEO founder, Aaron Levy, he was saying that it's not that AI will, just kill all these jobs, all the people who are there. In fact, you should think about it that let's say if we create an AI-based BDR, SDR, right, for business development and sales, just trying to find out the right companies and people in those companies and their emails and send them like customized emails and get the appointments. The whole BDR, SDR work is gone. But then there are still a lot of areas where the person still has to, the existing BDRs or SDRs will still have to get on a call to discuss, right? And that hand-to-hand combat that you have to do in sales will still be required. So maybe earlier you were trying to get like 20 clients a quarter. Now you can probably go and try to get like 100 clients a
100.
quarter. So basically these people may not be fired. They will just do more work,
Correct.
right? And that is, I think, a much better framing of how you can sort of start increasing productivity and maximizing the output of the existing people. It's not about firing them. It's about doing more work, getting more business, getting more code written.
100% agree to that, and that's where the business potential is growing with AI, and anything which was earlier slower can now be expedited way faster, and people are able to become more efficient for sure. On companies or even smaller startups, what would have otherwise taken few months to deploy can happen in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And the growth potential is vast.
So do more and you can probably do it in less.
Yes.
And so that's good news. Specifically, can you give me one area the last time yesterday when you were writing code, where did you use AI from a code generation or code development perspective?
The last one which I recall was to generate an API, which was I was trying to do something with emails, particularly. Here it was on the lines of trying to add it to draft after some modification. Again, here I did come across an issue because Cursor was not able to generate the exact code base which I wanted. So it was able to link it to other functions though. So I had to later on create those functions myself. With, again, I could take some help of AI there as well. So internally for smaller things, you will have to use AI. For a larger thing, which again AI can generate.
And just certainly it provides an opportunity to build products and companies much more efficiently by having lesser number of engineers. And we can look at it both ways, either the same number of engineers and doing more, shipping more code and shipping more products, or if you're doing something where it required a 5 engineering team for you, you may not need 5, you may not need only 2 today, right? So that's something that
Correct. And another side where I see things to be much more easier with AI is interpretation. Because when you are generating with AI, right, a lot of these comments and the structure of the code is well formatted. Otherwise, earlier it would take a lot of time to understand someone else's code, because
Okay.
another engineer who has written a code, I had to see, because everyone has their own style of coding.
Oh, that's a
Now,
good point.
because of AI, there are already comments added. A lot of these structural aspects are near perfect. So it's easier for any other engineer to understand as well. I don't have to worry about, wait, what was he thinking? What is the style of writing?
So this is very common in India. A lot of engineers would write the code and it was hard to understand, and
Yes.
also they would not do they will not write the
Documenting.
technical documentation of what is this code and how is it written. So it does both, all of these things now.
Documentation, to an extent, it's pretty good. But what it does really great in is adding comments in the code base itself.
Okay.
Right? I won't say it's creating a readme dot a
But it
markdown
can.
of.
If you ask it to
can.
create technical document, it will, right?
It will. However, that's not great right now. That's where I mentioned the interpretation of larger code base is not
It's not that
is not that great.
Got the point. Now, some people are taking it to the next level, and I want to touch upon this. So, Adit Seth did a comment on Twitter where he was, I think, quoting McCabe Wrigley. We are at the point with AI code gen where Cursor plus Claude 3.5 Sonnet is a legit technical co-founder. Right? So now they're saying like you can have a CTO, right? So, and then the example he gave was, this is the best way to build UI with AI. Use Cursor plus VO. I don't know what VO is. Have you tried VO?
I haven't actually.
Okay.
I would.
So it's basically saying with a custom prompt below, you can easily trigger VO to create beautiful interfaces for you directly from Cursor Composer. And then there are other examples, right? One after the other. My question to you is, are we at a point where this AI thing, Claude, Cursor, Replit, VO can actually become your technical co-founder?
I think that's a little exaggerated view.
For somebody like me who does not code today and understands technology products and all that, and I want a technical co-founder, I will still need Kushal. I cannot have like AI do it. Possibly 5 years down the line with AGI, I'm not sure. So today what you're saying is, it's more like you get an engineering manager or like a senior engineer along with you, or maybe a couple of engineers that can help you, where you already know the architecture and already know coding and you already know the nuances and issues.
Right, 100%. It's calling a technical co-founder is a little bit too much, I believe. Maybe yes, the efficiency of the technical co-founder for sure is going to be maybe 10x, right? I would even call it 100x, but people might find that exaggerated. But another perspective which I can offer here is, since you just mentioned what did I generate with Cursor, there's another thing which I keep reading. I keep reading the latest research papers which keeps getting published.
Okay.
I came across this concept, DAG, right? It's called diffusion augmented generation. This is something where a VLM is combined with LLM, or something like a visual language model in a multimodal system, which can also be augmented in a real world scenario. Now, these are the places where a technical co-founder or an engineer would be required to understand, right? I can't ask a Cursor to do research for me and find out some concepts. It's not going to do that. And there's a lot of state-of-the-art things which are getting published every day. That's where an engineer or a technologist should be spending more time and trying to understand, because he can easily generate the code bases. He doesn't have to sit the whole day and code. He can spend his time better, understand something, and maybe get into a little bit of technical research aspect and implement that in the code base and make things even more efficient.
Okay, so this was very interesting. What I learned is that for non-coders, there's good news that you have a shot at technology products, but you will still need somebody who understands back-end deployment, infrastructure, DevOps to some extent, and also even some help on the front-end side. But you can probably develop something new with lesser number of engineers.
Right.
If you're a non-coder and you have 10 engineers with you, then you can probably do much more. You can launch many different things, and just the volume of shipping of code and products can be much higher. If you are a technical person and you're junior, you can do a lot of things that you're not good at, and you can also learn a lot of things along with AI. If you're a senior 10x engineer, technologist, CTO, you can probably either manage with less engineers, or you can ship more products with the same amount of engineers.
Yeah, plus I think uh, creating state-of-the-art systems would be easier, and that's where maybe the CTO should spend more time at trying to ensure what they're deploying is best in class.
Yeah, I think now if you're not solving like very hard problems, and you're not bringing, um, you know, you're not like bringing solutions which were not possible before, then you're missing out on something. AI provides that power now. No, this is
Definitely.
great, Kushal. Thank you. And this is in continuation to our series on AI, and specifically generative AI, and how it is helping the world, how it's helping the technology world as well as the society. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Amit.